Have you ever wondered how someone can continue to show love and kindness, even when they know they will be betrayed? This is one of the most fascinating aspects of Jesus' life. His deep awareness of what was to come, including the actions of Judas Iscariot. From the very beginning, Jesus knew that Judas would betray him. Yet, he chose him, walked with him, taught him, and treated him as part of his inner circle. Jesus' foreknowledge wasn't limited to Judas. He knew the hearts of everyone around him. He understood their strengths, weaknesses, and even their hidden intentions. But with Judas, the situation was unique. Judas wasn't just any person. He was one of the 12 disciples. He was trusted, he handled the finances, and he was close enough to Jesus to share meals and intimate conversations. Knowing all this, why would Jesus allow Judas to remain so close? Why didn't he stop him? The answer lies in Jesus' understanding of the bigger picture, one that stretches far beyond human emotions and judgments. When we think about betrayal, we often associate it with anger, resentment, or a desire to seek revenge. But Jesus' response to Judas was astonishing. He knew Judas would betray him for 30 pieces of silver, yet he still washed Judas's feet along with the other disciples. He didn't publicly expose him or treat him differently. Instead, he gave Judas every opportunity to choose a different path. This reveals a profound truth about Jesus. His focus was never on condemning others, but on giving them every chance to turn back to what is right. Now, let's think about this. Imagine being in Jesus' place, knowing that someone close to you is planning to betray you. Would you still show them kindness? Would you still serve them, love them, and hope for their redemption? It's difficult for us to comprehend because, as humans, our natural reaction to betrayal is often anger or self-preservation. But Jesus operated on a completely different level. He demonstrated a love that was not dependent on how he was treated in return. One of the most striking moments is during the Last Supper. Jesus was fully aware that Judas had already made arrangements to hand him over to his enemies. Despite this, he shared bread with Judas, a gesture of friendship and closeness in that culture. This act wasn't just about tradition. It was a final opportunity for Judas to reflect on his choices. The foreknowledge of Jesus also highlights his trust in the divine plan. Jesus understood that everything happening was part of a greater purpose. Judas's betrayal, as painful as it was, played a role in the unfolding of events that would lead to the crucifixion and ultimately to redemption. This doesn't excuse Judas' actions. He made his choices and bore responsibility for them. But it shows how even the darkest moments can be used for a greater good. For us, this chapter of Jesus' life serves as a powerful reminder. It challenges us to think about how we respond to betrayal or mistreatment. Do we allow bitterness to take root? Or do we rise above it and trust that even in the midst of pain, there is a purpose? It also reminds us that no matter how far someone may stray, there is always hope for change until the very end. Jesus' foreknowledge of Judas's betrayal wasn't about judgment. It was about demonstrating the depth of his love, patience, and commitment to fulfilling his mission. It shows us that love isn't about convenience or reciprocity. It's about staying true to one's purpose, even when it's difficult. In This chapter, we see not only the wisdom of Jesus, but also his unwavering resolve to do what was right, no matter the cost. It's a lesson for all of us, especially when we face our own trials and challenges in relationships. The story of Judas is not just about betrayal, it's about the opportunity for redemption and the incredible power of love to endure even the deepest wounds. Jesus knew Judas would betray him, but he never stopped showing him love. And that's the kind of love that can change lives, even today. Betrayal is a word that cuts deep. It's not just about being wronged, it's about being hurt by someone you trusted. When Judas betrayed Jesus, it was one of the most shocking moments in history. Jesus had treated him as a close friend, a disciple, and yet Judas chose to hand him over to his enemies. The question that naturally comes to mind is, why did this happen? What purpose could there possibly be in such a painful betrayal? To understand this, we need to step back and look at the bigger picture. At first glance, Judas's betrayal seems like a tragic mistake, an unfortunate turn of events. But when you dig deeper, you begin to see that it played a role in something far greater than anyone could have imagined. One key point to remember is that Jesus' mission was always about bringing people closer to the truth and fulfilling a divine purpose. This mission included sacrifice, and Judas's betrayal set into motion events that led to Jesus' ultimate sacrifice. This wasn't a random act of treachery, but something that fit within a grand plan. Judas's betrayal led to Jesus being captured and taken before the authorities. Without that betrayal, the events leading to the crucifixion might not have unfolded in the same way. But why was this sacrifice necessary? The answer lies in the message of love, forgiveness, and redemption. Jesus' sacrifice became a turning point, a way for people to reflect on their lives, seek forgiveness, and find hope in a new path. Now, this doesn't mean Judas's actions were justified. He made a choice, and choices have consequences. But it's remarkable how even a terrible decision like betrayal was woven into a purpose that had the potential to bring light into darkness. This speaks to a profound truth. Even in situations that seem hopeless or filled with pain, there is often a purpose that we might not immediately see. Have you ever faced a situation that felt like a betrayal or an unexpected twist that shattered your trust? It's natural to wonder why such things happen. But sometimes those moments become opportunities for growth, understanding, and even blessings in disguise. That's what we can learn from this chapter of Jesus' story. Another interesting aspect to consider is how Jesus responded to Judas. Even though he knew what Judas was planning, Jesus didn't respond with anger or vengeance. Instead, he continued to give Judas every chance to make a different choice. This teaches us something profound about mercy and forgiveness. It's also worth reflecting on the fact that even though Judas betrayed Jesus, other disciples like Peter made mistakes too. The difference was that Peter found his way back through repentance. This shows that betrayal doesn't have to be the end of the story. There is always hope for redemption when someone chooses to turn back toward what is right. For us, the purpose behind Judas's betrayal reminds us that no situation is beyond redemption. Even when things seem dark, there can be a higher purpose that unfolds in ways we don't expect. It challenges us to trust in the process, even when we don't fully understand it. In the end, What seemed like a moment of defeat, the betrayal of Judas, became a key step in the fulfillment of a greater mission. And that's a lesson we can carry with us. Sometimes the very things that break us can be the things that lead to growth, healing, and purpose. Judas's betrayal reminds us that even in our darkest moments, there is hope for something greater. And it shows us that love, forgiveness, and the opportunity to change are always available to those who seek it. Betrayal is one of the hardest experiences to go through. When someone you trust lets you down, it cuts deep. Judas Iscariot's betrayal of Jesus stands as one of the most well-known examples of this painful reality. But Judas's story is not just a historical account. It's filled with lessons that are still relevant for us today. Let's explore some of the powerful lessons we can learn from this tragic event. Love in the face of betrayal. One of the most striking aspects of this story is how Jesus treated Judas. Even though he knew Judas would betray him, Jesus continued to show love and kindness. He washed Judas's feet at the Last Supper, served him food, and didn't publicly humiliate him. This teaches us that we don't have to respond to betrayal with hatred or bitterness. Instead, we can rise above it with grace and dignity. Have you ever been hurt by someone close to you? The natural response is often to cut them off or seek revenge. But the story of Jesus and Judas challenges us to consider a different approach, one that prioritizes compassion over retaliation. The importance of choices. Judas made a choice. He wasn't forced to betray Jesus. He willingly did so for money. This reminds us that our choices have consequences. Even when life presents us with challenges, we are responsible for how we respond. Life is filled with moments where we have to choose between what is right and what is wrong. Sometimes the wrong choice might seem easier or more rewarding in the short term, but it often leads to regret. Judas's story encourages us to pause and think carefully about the choices we make. The danger of greed and misplaced priorities. One of the driving factors behind Judas's betrayal was greed. He valued money more than loyalty to Jesus. This serves as a warning for us to be mindful of our priorities. In today's world, it's easy to get caught up in the pursuit of wealth, status, or material possessions. But when we place those things above integrity, relationships, and spiritual growth, we risk losing what truly matters. Judas's mistake reminds us to keep our hearts focused on the right values. The power of repentance. After the betrayal, Judas was filled with regret, but instead of seeking forgiveness, he chose despair. In contrast, Peter, another disciple, also made a mistake by denying Jesus. However, Peter sought forgiveness and was restored. This teaches us that making a mistake doesn't have to be the end of our story. What matters is how we respond afterward. Do we give in to guilt and hopelessness, or do we seek forgiveness and strive to do better? Judas's tragedy was not just the betrayal itself, but his refusal to believe that redemption was possible. God's ability to bring good out of bad situations. Betrayal set into motion events that led to a great outcome. This shows that even when things seem hopeless, there can be a greater purpose at work. Have you ever faced a situation that seemed like a complete disaster? It's comforting to remember that sometimes those very situations can lead to growth, new opportunities, and unexpected blessings. final thoughts. The story of Judas's betrayal isn't just about his failure. It's about the lessons we can learn from it. We are reminded to love even when it's hard, to make wise choices, to guard against greed, and to believe in the power of repentance. No matter what mistakes we've made, there is always a chance to turn back and make things right. And even when others betray us, we have the choice to respond with love and grace, just as Jesus did. Judas's story may have ended tragically, but it leaves us with lessons that can guide us toward a life filled with compassion, wisdom, and hope. Betrayal often feels like the final chapter in a story, a point of no return. But what if it doesn't have to be? The story of Judas's betrayal may seem like it ends in darkness, but it opens the door to powerful lessons about redemption, hope, and the ability to rise beyond even the worst moments of failure. We've seen how Judas made a tragic choice, but what's just as important is how Jesus responded to that betrayal. He never sought revenge, never cursed Judas, and never closed the door on forgiveness. This tells us something profound. Even in betrayal, there can be redemption if someone chooses to seek it. Hope for those who feel they've failed. Let's be honest, everyone makes mistakes. Sometimes those mistakes weigh heavily on us, and we wonder if we can ever recover. Judas's story reminds us that failure isn't the end unless we make it so. Peter, another disciple, also failed by denying Jesus 3 times. But Peter's story didn't end there because he sought forgiveness and redemption. His life became one of powerful leadership and transformation. This contrast shows that redemption is always possible, no matter how great the failure. The lesson here is clear. When you've done wrong, don't let guilt and shame pull you further down. Instead, seek forgiveness and work toward becoming better. God can bring good. Out of any situation, Judas's betrayal was painful and tragic, but it didn't stop the greater mission from being fulfilled. In fact, it played a role in bringing about a message of hope and transformation. This reminds us that even when things seem broken or beyond repair, there is often a way forward that we can't immediately see. Have you ever faced a situation where everything seemed to fall apart, only to later realize it led to unexpected growth or blessings? Life has a way of turning challenges into opportunities, even when we can't see it in the moment. Love triumphs over betrayal. One of the most beautiful aspects of this story is how love continues to shine through, even in the face of betrayal. Jesus' mission was always about love. Love that isn't dependent on how others treat us, but remains steady and unshaken. This teaches us a valuable lesson. We don't have to let betrayal harden our hearts. We can choose to continue loving, trusting, and believing in the good around us. Love, when held on to, can be a powerful force that brings healing and peace. Forgiveness is always possible. Perhaps one of the most difficult lessons to accept is that forgiveness is always an option. When someone has hurt us deeply, forgiving them may feel impossible, but holding on to bitterness only harms us in the end. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing what was done. It means releasing the burden of resentment and choosing peace instead. Judas's story reminds us that forgiveness is powerful, and choosing it can bring freedom and healing. Your story is not over. No matter what has happened in your life, whether you've been betrayed or made mistakes yourself, your story is not over. There is always a way forward, always a path toward healing, growth, and redemption. The world may try to define people by their failures, but the message here is that those failures don't have to define you. What matters is how you choose to move forward. Redemption beyond betrayal is a message of hope for everyone. It reminds us that failure isn't the end, that love can triumph over pain, and that forgiveness has the power to heal. Judas's story is a warning, but it's also an invitation, a reminder that no matter how dark things may seem, there is always the possibility for redemption and a brighter future. When we hold on to that truth, we open ourselves to a life filled with hope, purpose, and peace.